Hello and welcome back. This is Evaluating the Impact of the International Standard for Education 2021 and Planning for the ISE 2027 seminar. We are now going to move on to a panel discussion on implementing the 2027 ISE from the practitioner's perspective. And joining me today, we have Tammy Hanson who is the Elite Education Director at the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, where she leads the agency's education and engagement initiatives. With a focus on strategic planning and program development, Tammy oversees the creation and implementation of data-driven educational resources that promote athletes' rights, responsibilities, and clean sports values. Next, we have Paul Moss, and he is the head of education at UK Anti-Doping, where he leads the strategic design, development, and implementation of their anti-doping and clean sport education programs. Since joining UKAD in 2019, Paul has been instrumental in shaping national education initiatives that promote integrity and ethical decision-making in sport. Petra is the executive director of the Bahamas Anti-Doping Commission, where she leads national efforts to promote clean sport and uphold integrity across all Olympic and non-Olympic disciplines. And then we have Medina, who serves as the education manager for the Pan American Regional Anti-Doping Organization, where she leads the development and implementation of education strategies across 13 Latin America member countries. Welcome. So this is going to be a practitioner panel, and I know we have a lot of practitioners who are listening in. So if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat. Please drop them into the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. But first, I'd like to start off with Diana, and to ask you this question. What are the most significant changes proposed in the 2027 revision of the ISE?
Okay, thank you, Jules. Well, seeing all the recommendations for the International Standard of Education, we see a clear focus on everything being addressed to all athletes at all levels. This includes especially athletes with visual disabilities. For example, also we receive some recommendations about deaf athletes that have these kind of disabilities. We often lack accessible information to educate themselves on all anti-doping issues. Our work as national and regional anti-doping organizations is to support them and prevent our sports community, with the main objectives to ensure that athletes participate in an environment free of provided substances and a clean environment in each of their competitions. Finally, I think that the vision of the standard always will be that all athletes need to be awareness and educate first before they pass through a doping control processes, especially if it's the first time the athletes are going to pass through a test. From our region, we work really hard to create these tools very accessible because we see, again, the recommendations to have enough tools to provide the information to the athletes in all levels. For example, in our region, these tools allow us to provide information in a dynamic and practical way that allow us to measure also how much the athletes understand the information. We strive to ensure that each athlete truly understand the often complex world of anti-doping through all of our platforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Let's go over to Petra. The same question. What do you find are the most significant changes that are being proposed by the ISE?
You only can hear my answer if I'm unmuted. So I think looking over the proposed changes for the 2027 version of the ISE, there's going to be an increased focus on, formal training for educators and accreditation. And I think that's something that's going to be definitely significant in all of the ADOs around the world, because some of us are trained educators and then some of us are not. We're just people that work within the anti-doping field. So something that is proposed by WADA to assist all of the ADOs around the world will definitely help everyone at least, operate on a level playing field the same way we ask, our athletes to do so. And then also making sure that there are mandatory stuff in reference to the delivery delivery of the educational sessions, like not just the delivery, but also the monitoring and the evaluation of it. So making sure that things are, strategically, planned out, monitored, and evaluated for that real world impact instead of just numbers based. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Paul, let's turn to you. And from your perspective, what are the most significant changes that you see in the 2027 version of the ISE?
Thanks, Jules. So whilst there's a lot of continuity in the requirements, there's a few standout elements for me. The first being around the expansion of the education pool, and we broadly support that direction, but it's clearly generated a lot of questions and concerns in the feedback. Obviously, appreciating that this isn't the final version, so it may change depending on the direction that the drafting group take the latest iteration of the feedback. But it is a slight concern for us based on our definition of national level athlete. That we need to undertake an impact assessment, I think, based on that, because of the inclusion of those minors competing at international events where testing takes place. That could have a significant impact on the work we do. So, yeah, those are some of the key considerations for us, Jules.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. And Tammy, let's go over to you. From your perspective, what are the major changes that are being proposed by the 2027 ISE?
Yeah, thanks, Jules. I think that Carrie laid out a lot of the proposed changes really well and kind of drew attention to those key areas. And in addition to the things that the panel has said, I agree with Paul that we've definitely seen an expansion in the mandatory education pool, which, we are in support of. Also, a really big one is the elevated rules and standards for educators. We're excited about the idea of having some standards for educators. We want to just ensure that all of those standards are standards that can be met globally by all anti-doping organizations. I also feel from a practitioner standpoint, some things that really stand out is a higher emphasis or focus on the recognition of those prior learning programs. Carrie had mentioned kind of changing the wording and the language so that there's a better understanding globally of how we might acknowledge prior learnings from our athletes, just to continue to avoid unnecessary repetition and improve efficiencies there. Also, I feel like in reading through those standards, it seems to place a higher emphasis or encourages more positive messaging and tailoring our education messaging to various learning groups. So while that language was in the first one, I think there's just a higher emphasis there, and I'm excited about that, as I think that always using positive framing when we're educating our athletes and knowing our audiences is going to be incredibly key to successful delivery.